Welcome back to the channel, guys. So we're going to do some work on the BSA today. Now this has been stood for just over a year, I think it is, and it may be going to some shows in the summer, so I need to get it up and running, and I thought it's a perfect opportunity to do a video on if you've had a bike that's in storage, getting it back on the road, and specifically old classic bikes, some of the other things that you might not consider that could potentially cost you a lot of money. So we'll roll the intro and then we'll get into it. There's a number of things to consider when you want to get an old bike back on the road, and that's whether it's been stored for, as in this case, 12 months or a number of years. You need to go through the motions of checking each of these things and making sure everything's okay. Getting an engine to actually run, you need 4 things: air, fuel, compression and ignition. We've got plenty of air around us, and on this particular bike it's not a concern. There's no air filter, it's just like a mesh gauze. If you're working on a bike that had an air box or something like that, you want to be opening that up, make sure there's no rodents or whatever inside, or make sure that the air filter hasn't degraded, gone powdery. Yeah, just make sure that's all okay. Fuel, I always drain the bowl on the carb. I've checked the fuel that's in the tank, that seems okay. It will have lost some of its octane value, but it hasn't, turned into syrup. So I think we're okay there. Compression, it's definitely got compression, or it did when it was parked up, is the key. Now it's a bit difficult on a kickstart motorcycle, single, to do a compression check. You can do it, but you might not have the equipment either. What you can do is pull the plug out, your thumb over the spark plug hole, and then send it over the stroke, and you'll soon know if it's got compression, but we'll go through that. And then ignition. Now, I know when I parked this up, the battery was on its way out, so I bought a new battery for this bike and charged it. You may need to buy a new battery, or at least make sure that your battery is fully charged. But the first port of call, specifically for this kind of motorcycle, which is a separate oil tank dry sump assembly, so it scavenges the oil out and sends it back to a tank. It shouldn't have oil in the crankcases. Some bikes do, like Emily's Mutt and the Suzuki derivative of that, some Hondas, so you need to be sure of your situation. But in this instance, it's a dry sump engine. So what I need to do, I've got a magnetic sump plug in the crankcases. We drop that out and drain any oil that's seeped back from the tank into the cases. Now the reason for doing that is if you've got oil within the cases, when the piston returns to its lowest point, you can end up breaking piston rings by hydro locking the engine. So we're going to drain the oil, see how much we get out. Now I know the level is low, and that's where the oil's got to be. It's not on the floor, believe it or not. I know it's British, but it doesn't actually leak. So yeah, we'll do that first. I've actually left that about an hour and a half draining, and drained quite a bit out. So as you can see here, I will measure this out actually, and then I can tell you exactly how much we've got. There we go, I've just poured that out, and we've actually got, you probably won't be able to see it on the measure, but you might do. We've got just shy of 700 ml. That's quite a bit of oil to have in the cases, so you can understand the importance now of doing that task. Now this bike does need an oil change. It will be fully serviced before we recommission it, but I just want to get it started and up and running again first. So now we've done that, what we're going to do next is fit the battery and check we've got spark. As I said, we are going to get this battery fitted. Now I rewired this bike 2 years ago, somewhere around there. So I'm not too concerned about the wiring, but what I would say, if it's a bike you don't know, or a bike that's been stood for a significant amount of time, I would definitely be taking the time to double check all the wiring. Just be sure that everything is as you expect, because this could also be known as the fire test. Yeah, you try these all in, see if you have any issues. You hear any noises, not birds outside, you hear any noises or there's any flashes of smoke, disconnect the battery straight away, get that removed and fix the issues. Like these bikes that sit in barns and different things, you can get all sorts of rodents get in and start chewing the wiring up, so definitely worth checking. We've got our new battery on. What I would do then, before I even put the fuse in or turn the ignition on, is we will check the voltage and see if we've got anything drawing voltage down. Those longest battery bolts. Oh my god. Are you done? Come on. Still going. It's good. Good. Hopefully you can see that. In the 20 range, 13 volt. That's a strong battery, that is. Gone for the Ultra Max variety. We've gone for that because it's cheap and it's what's fitted to the Tiger. There you go then. Main fuse into our premium fuse holder. Now what we'll do, we'll lean over this side and the keys in, and we got life. And lights. Okay. Oh, I do. Oh, I've got lights. Been that long, I forgot what the controls are. Low beam, low beam. Even got a horn, look at that. So all of that's working. Those little initial checks are done. I've just been calling for some food, so I'm going to go and eat. Then we'll get the plug out, check for ignition, spark. We'll drain the bowl on the carb, and then give this a whirl. And we're back, and we now need to check for spark. You might be able to see that. So I'm going to lay that so that can ground out. Right, hopefully you can see that, because I can't. Nice strong ignition pilot. What I can tell from there, move that spark plug out of the way and turn the ignition off. So if I my thumb over the plug hole, I was telling you earlier about compression. Yeah, put the plug back in. Always by hand. I'm just going to sort this fuel out there. Got me a nice 13/16 socket under the bowl of the carb. And what I'm going to do is undo the drain plug, like so. Some kind of loose. Let's see how much fuel we've got in here. None. An empty bowl. So what we're going to do, just crack the tap a little bit. Here comes the fuel. Very briefly. No big lumps or any horrible debris in there. It's got an odour to it. I'm not going to profess to say it's a good odour. Well, these are notoriously finicky, these ML Mark IIs. It's only on here for one very simple reason, and that's because That's what was fitted to my dad's bike in those photos. So we got air. Seems we've got fuel. Can turn that tap on now. We will give the bowl a bit of a tap actually. Make sure the needle isn't sticking, and we'll turn the fuel off now. So we should have a bowl full of fuel. We should be able to go for a start. Before I do go for the start on this, what I would say is you may have to mess around with points. It might be ignition timing and all those sorts of things. I know this hasn't been messed about with, and it's got the Boyer digital ignition on, so that takes a lot of the hassle out of the way. But if you do need those things, there are plenty of videos out there. Make sure you check up on that before you start dabbling and moving things around and messing about with things. Let's see how this will fire up, and once it does, check out the other videos on this bike. Get familiar with it, and there's plenty more coming, because as long as it starts, it then justifies me to start the clean-up and getting this ready for show season and put it on the road. But let's give it a go. Here's a quick lesson in how I have to start this bike. So, kick her over. We're on compression stroke now. We check it just over the stroke. So, and we'll go for the choke. Put the ignition on. Other key thing, make sure the throttle isn't stuck and it returns to that position. And a good swift kick. We've got some life. That's all we're asking for. That is all we were asking for. A little bit of life. There we go.